Welcome to our channel, everybody.
Hello.
Today we're going to deal with this on the whiteboard behind us. I don't know if you can see it, but it says fog, fear, obligation and guilt. And we're going to start with the fear part. A lot of the fear that Watchtower engenders in people is due to their teachings. And people take the teachings, JWs do, as being absolutely correct because they come from God. So here's some of the research that I did early on in the piece. One was on organ transplants. And in the December the 22nd, 1949 Awake that you can see here, it was talking about spare parts for your body. And it said you'd be better off to be disabled or to have impaired sight than to take an eye transplant, for example. They considered it to be cannibalism, they said. So it was a no to transplants. Then just a little while later, in the Watchtower of August the 1st, 1961, which I have here, they said, "It does not seem that any scriptural principle or law is involved. It therefore is something that each individual must decide for himself." So it was okay. Then, in November the 15th, 1967, Watchtower, on page 702, it was not okay. It was back to cannibalism again. They said, and I quote, "Those who submit to such operations are thus living off the flesh of another human. That is cannibalistic." Not okay.
Of course, it can be cannibalistic if you think you're killing someone to take those parts, but if someone has already died and they're gifting those body organs, some can think that it's okay.
But what we're looking at here is how they flip and flop, because in the June the 8th, 1968 Awake, without any scriptures being mentioned, it says, the scriptural aspect, and I'm quoting here, "Not to be overlooked are the religious, the scriptural issues involved. There are those such as the Christian Witnesses of Jehovah who consider all transplants between humans as cannibalism, and is not the utilizing of the flesh of another human for one's own life cannibalistic?" You'll notice that there's no scripture mentioned there. There's no scripture in the whole paragraph. In fact, there's no scripture in that entire article dealing with that because it's not mentioned in the Bible. So this information that has flipped and flopped one way and the other is regarded as coming from God. So my thinking was, well, if it comes from God, it should be perfect. It should be accurate. Why would God lie to people or mislead people? Surely, if he's a God of justice and wisdom, he would tell you the facts straight off the bat and he wouldn't need to correct it because it would be the truth. And the truth can stand up to any scrutiny. When we go through and we look at the history of all these flip-flops, it goes from, yes, it's okay, to no, it's not, yes, it is, no, it's not, oh, maybe it's a conscience matter, oh, no, it's not, oh, yes, it's okay again. And it just goes backwards and forwards. So it's obviously man-made wisdom.
So it's new light this year, but next year it's old light.
So God was misleading people, obviously. So this is part of the fear, and what I wanted to highlight here is that the fear is the fear of going against what is taught. But if what is taught is inaccurate, then why should you be fearful about calling into question something which is inaccurate? It's not supported by Scripture. It's not perfect from God because it's changing all the time. So therefore, you have to question it. When you start questioning it, you will find that others disagree because they see you as being an apostate. Just for raising a question, as you could ask the question, why have these teachings changed? The immediate answer will be, oh, it's just new light. But then it becomes old light, and then new light again, and then old light. It's like the light being switched on and off and on and off. Darkness, light, but there's no continuing things getting brighter, as they would tell you in the publications. So when we started talking to people, we found that they came up with all sorts of stories. We were supposedly starting a new group, and we were going around trying to convince people to join our group. That was quite a long way from the truth, because we were not convinced of the accuracy of the publications, and so we weren't looking at starting a new group. Far from it. We were actually convinced that if God did exist, which we highly doubted, then he must be some sort of a monster. And I'll give you a reason, my reasoning on that. When we started looking into child sexual abuse, we realised that there were thousands of victims of child sexual abuse in Australia alone. Many tens of thousands around the world. No doubt all of these young kids would have prayed to God to have some relief from their molestation. So, if God did not answer their prayers, he's either a real ratbag who doesn't care about kids being molested, or he doesn't have the power to do anything about it, so therefore he's impotent. He is not omnipotent and having all power, because what sort of monster would allow thousands of kids to be molested and not do anything about it? I certainly wouldn't want to worship someone like that.
Or like the sand in the Kingdom Hall, how suddenly the sand appeared which they desperately needed to complete the hall, and how many people died in the meantime, but the brothers in the congregation looked upon it as a blessing, a miracle from Jehovah, and yet people died.
And what they didn't say was that if you have sand that is blown up onto a beach in a storm and it's got salt in it, and you use that to put into your foundations, you're going to have all your steel rusting and your building's going to fall down. So certainly God couldn't have been looking after them very well if that was the advice that he gave them, use the sand. So getting back to our situation of when we were waking up. So you wake up and you find out these things and you start questioning and using logic to figure out whether this is right or not. So I'm at home one day in my office and I see a vehicle pull up and it's two elders, and I thought, hello. That's unannounced and I'm not prepared to see them, so I asked one of my staff to tell them that they'd need to make an appointment and I wasn't available. So that's what he did, and I did some research that night because I was pretty sure that they would be back fairly quickly. The next day they turned up, again unannounced, no appointment made, and so I went out into the car park to talk to them. The first thing they asked was, well, what are you doing about your dedication to God's organisation? I said, I never made a dedication to God's organisation. They said, oh, but you did. Your baptism was to God's organisation. I said, no, they changed the rules in 1984-85 and they inserted the organisation into the baptism questions. When I got baptised in August of 1968, the questions just said Jehovah and Jesus. Those were the ones that you were dedicating your life to. So I said, my dedication is to Jehovah. And they said, so how do you feel you're living up to your dedication? I said, well, that's between me and God. It's none of your business. I don't accept your authority over me. Then they said to me, well, when are we going to see you back at the meetings? I said, I will never set foot in a Kingdom Hall again. Now, up until this time, I hadn't said anything that they could actually have a go at me at and disfellowship me for. And I made sure that I made them well aware of what else I would do if they ever mentioned my name or Joy's name at a meeting. I said to them, if you ever mention our names at a meeting, I have already consulted my lawyer, I have a letter prepared, and I will sue every single one of the elders, including you two, and Watchtower for defamation. And believe me, I will do it. And I repeated that 3 times, just to make sure in the course of this conversation that they were under no illusions as to my intentions. I've never seen anyone since, haven't had a single communication from any of them. So you see, at that point, when I started saying that I would sue them, I saw the fear in their eyes. I saw the power shift from them to me. So fear is all in your mind with these guys. They have the fear because they have the self-appointed position of an elder and they have this organisation behind them. an organisation which, as you've seen in just this one example, and there's hundreds of them that I've got here, that they don't know what they're talking about and they have no authority because it doesn't exist in Scripture or in fact. So, we believe that this fear is what causes us to do everything that they want, and it actually is bad for your health as well. Joy might like to tell us a bit about how she found the health effects of anxiety when going to meetings.
Up until 6 to 12 months, at least, maybe going on 2 years, I was having many issues with my health. And before going to meetings, you get this fear build up inside you, this stress and tension, and I ended up many times in the bathroom vomiting and always wondered, what the problem was, what the issues were. And it wasn't until leaving the organisation that all my problems disappeared and very rarely get it back again. But it's just the thought of having to get ready for the meetings, getting to the meetings, then the issue of field service comes up and your quota and what you have to do when you go out and how long you're to be out for, and it's just a build-up every week, week in, week out, of all this that is happening.
And I noticed that after we stopped attending meetings, within a week, Joy never got sick again in that manner. Never had any more vomiting issues. Her anxiety levels dropped. We both became very much more chilled out. My kids mentioned it. Oh, wow, you guys are so laid back. And we started joking and enjoying life and actually getting back to our true selves. So you see, the fear of displeasing others, the fear of not being seen at meetings, the fear of not putting in a field service report, the fear of the elders coming and visiting you, the fear of not being able to make it through Armageddon, the fear of not seeing loved ones again, all of these things are just fear, fear, fear. And it gets you down. And after a period of time, you just find yourself being overwhelmed by fear.
But it was quite a contradictory too, because all the way through our time being in the organisation, we were told that it's a fear, a healthy fear of Jehovah, which was what you're meant to have, and yet it wasn't really healthy at all.
No, very unhealthy to have that fear. Good point, that. So we thought we would deal with fear first because that is the F of the fog. The next one is obligation, and so in our next video we're going to deal with the idea of how you feel obligated to do things, and that's quite a very intensive amount of control, because bear in mind that when you're scared stiff about something happening and then someone puts you under obligation to do things, that obligation is so much stronger because of your fear. So if you can get rid of the fear, then you can really make some progress personally on your own health, your own mental health, as well as physical health. So we're going to deal on that fear one in our next video.